You're listening to the Conference Board of Canada's Mental Health and COVID-19 series with Dr. Bill Howatt, Chief of Research, Workplace Productivity.
Hi, Bill Howatt, Mental Health, COVID-19, Conference Board of Canada. Welcome. Today I'm going to have a conversation with you about worry. Now, when we think about worry, many of us may think worry's not that good for you, but a little bit of worry is actually a good thing. Worry is important for us is because it helps us identify whenever we have something that needs to be addressed or fixed. Now, the challenge is when worry becomes overwhelming and it becomes problematic. Now, today, the mnemonic I will use is worry. WORRY. Starting with the W, we'll start with wired, to pay attention to threats. We have neurologically wiring in our brain that looks at for the differences between what we have and what we want and when we notice something. So for example, if you're sitting, if back in the day, if you can think back that far, I doubt it you can, but when we were in the caves way thousands and thousands of years ago, and we looked over in the food pile and it was very small, our brain would perceive that as a threat and we would start to get worried, and that would be a sign that we need to do something. Worry is a thing about doing something because we have a concern, and if we don't address it, it could become problematic. Now, the O is once we have that, is the operational purpose of worry is good intention is to put a plan in place with the purpose of solving that issue. For example, going to go get food. Now, here's where the challenge is with the R. When our brain starts repeating a threat over and over and over, and we don't start to perceive there's a solution, and we start to have a challenge with it, that starts to increase our level of concern. And when that happens, it's important for you to be aware of when in the worry, the emotion of worry, what can happen with the emotion of worry is we can start the loop, and that motion of worry can start to drive negative thinking. And that negative thinking can start to drive our behaviors. And our behaviors are often an attempt to control how we feel worried. So we look for symptom relief. And what happens is we might end up engaging behaviors like food or alcohol, compensating behaviors to try to tame our worry. Now, the challenge with worry is you can't eliminate worry. And what happens is we can't control worry. And what happens with as many of us is we have some negative biases. Now, in regards to the control, what I'm meaning specifically, you can't tell your brain, don't worry. That's not how it works. It just can't happen. It's impossible. We are going to worry. However, the challenge with worry as we start to increase our worry is what goes into the next R is we start reliving it. And when we start reliving our worry, and we start going over and over and over, here's what happens. Our flexibility decreases. And so what really is starting to happen, if you kind of think about it, a lever, is that our emotions of worry starts to go up. Our perceived sense of coping goes down. So you start to notice this gap gets bigger. And as this gap gets bigger, that threat becomes more and more overwhelming, and we can become very confused. And the thing about worrying is that when we start worrying, it's almost like a string of pearls. Other things we used to think about pop up in our head. So things in the past that happened that were like that situation, they come forward. And now we have all kinds of negative thoughts and anxiety and fear. Now that we can identify that worry can have a good part and it can be overwhelming. Not that we can actually control worry, but what we can do, yes, we can actually increase our ability to better manage worry. And it's called worry management. There are things that we can do to help to move ourselves from that big gap to start to close the gap. And when we're able to do that, we can start to increase our flexibility of thinking. And that's really what worry management is about, is that you can increase your flexibility of the different things that whatever you're thinking about, worrying about could be, and being able to explore the risks and the possibilities more objectively, then we're able to actually start to lower our worry. So things that we can do. One thing we can really do is if we actually take what we're worried about and actually take it and write it down on paper, because when we actually take it out of our head and put it in paper, it actually changes how we actually how the brain actually will focus and interpret it, because when it's out of us our heads and on paper, we can be more objective. The other thing we can do is start to actually name what are the things we're specifically worried about when we're doing that exercise, and write out 4, 5, 6, 7 words that are associated with worry. And the other thing we can start doing is asking ourselves, okay, what are our objective facts that this is real? You see, what's interesting for us, it's important, feelings are not facts. So often our worry is where we're caught in feelings, but we don't have any facts. And so worry management is about, okay, what are my facts on this? Now I know what I feel, and because someone doesn't show up or something doesn't happen. But if we start to, now here's where the but is, we start to challenge that and start saying, okay, so what else could this actually mean? Or what else is going on? And what's the point is, if my worry is here, I'm really, really worried, and the solution's way over here. Getting there is probably unrealistic, but if we can start to change what we're thinking just a little bit, we start to increase our flexibility a little bit, and we can reduce that worry just a little bit. Every little movement can help re- us reduce our level of worry by talking to people what it is, about who could give us some ideas. What else could it mean? What else can happen? That we actually start to increase our range of flexibility. So, really, what's important for you to understand is that in a time of uncertainty, more and more people may be starting to worry. And if you realize that worry management, it takes some practice. And what can happen is worry can start to move into anxious thinking if we don't deal with it. So we're mindful that worry serves a purpose. A little bit of worry is not bad for us. A lot of worry can become overwhelming, and it can start to lead us into behaviors, compensating behaviors, much like anxiety or depression, to attempt to feel better. So if we're mindful that feelings are not facts, and if we're mindful that as we start to increase our worry and we start to lose our perceived ability and our coping skills, and that's our capacity and our threat goes, through worry management, it's us to start to influence our capacity through asking ourselves questions, by being objective, and by spending some time on it. So, the purpose of this conversation was just to introduce some ideas around worry management. My sense is that with all the uncertainty, as we start to return to the workplace and as people start to try to figure out how to live in this COVID-19, there will be challenges. And my sense is to give you just a couple ideas to be aware. There are things that we can do if we're mindful about how to start to reduce the impact of worry. And if you feel overwhelmed, because this is not therapy or counseling that I'm doing, it's this education. It's perfectly fine to reach out, talk to your EAP, talk to your psychological services, see if you have any internet cognitive behavioral therapy that can give you some tools. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one mechanism that can help people learn how to manage and not to control their thinking. And that's important, is how to influence their thinking that can be more beneficial for you. So, with that, I hope you have a good day and wish you all the best, and we'll get through this one day at a time. Hi, Bill Howatt here. Hopefully, you're finding these videos of some value. If you'd like to share these, on the lower right of your video, there's a icon you can click. You can send it through your social media feeds, join the Conference Board of Canada social media feed so we can keep you up to date. And if you have ideas, suggestions, please leave your comment so we can consider them. And if you have things that you'd like us to speak to, I certainly will try to do all I can to help out. With that, have a wonderful day.